Thanks for downloading episode 4 of ArableAware, a podcast from Adama Agricultural Solutions UK. My name is Russell Goldsmith, and as usual I'm joined by our two experts from Adama, Andy Bailey and David Roberts. And for this final show of 2018, we've come to Sherwood Farm in Wallingford, Oxon, where our host today is Mark Aldroyd, the farm manager here. And we're also joined by his assistant farm manager, Jack Bedlow. Plus, for the first time on this podcast, we have a working spaniel on the podcast too. We've got Mark's dog Ruby. So welcome all of you to the show. Now, as always, we'll shortly be hearing from one of our UK growers. Plus, coming up, we have a fascinating interview with Alex Montgomery of Microsoft, who I spoke to earlier this week about ad tech and how AI and the Internet of Things is helping to capture data from the fields to optimise use of land and improve product yield. But to kick off with, Mark, we always like to start each episode by getting to know our hosts. What can you tell us about Sherwood Farm?
Certainly welcome to Sherwood Farm today. It's two family farms run together, around about 1,200 hectares, quite a number of full-time staff. I have 4 full-time members on the Arable with us, and they're a very dedicated and well-presented team.
And what are you growing here?
We're a mixed rotation. For the cows, a grazing grass, silage and maize, and then on the arable side of things there is rape, wheat, spring barley, winter barley and winter beans, and that's we can sometimes go into spring oats and spring beans, just depending on the season where things go.
And I understand we have an award winner with us on this farm as well, so Jack, I believe you've congratulations are in order. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your recent success?
Yeah, so I got nominated by Mark for the Farm Work of the Year at the British Farming Awards, and so following sort of writing him, Mark wrote a thing about me. I had an interview with the judges and somehow managed to win it. So
fantastic.
For my work with bringing technology forward on the farm, so we taking on more GPS units to make sure all our tram lines are the same place every year for sprayer and drill, because we're running 2 drills and 2 sprayers here. And also we over the farm we're running about 14 tractors between the 2 dairy units and the arable unit, so keeping on top of the servicing which we're doing in the house. I keep on top of that with a new system which we've implemented and has helped us make things a bit easier.
Excellent. Well, I'll quiz you a little bit more on tech in a while, because as I said, we've got the interview with Microsoft coming up. But Mark, we're out here in your oats and vetch field. How's it all looking?
Very good this year. I mean, we've had to go into oats and vetch purely really to comply with EFA, but he also has brought other benefits in terms of that he is a cover crop. It's storing nitrogen up. And hopefully the benefits will come forward in the next crop in saving nitrogen. We've also seen that it's encouraging blackgrass to grow in the winter, so we're getting another flush of blackgrass. Another problem is cranesbill. That seems to be coming through quite well. And in the spring, when it goes out the closure date, we are also bringing tack sheep in to graze off the oats and vetch, so they then trample the top of the crop down, so we can then direct drill into this crop, which is saves a tillage cost, and also we can strip till our maize into this ground as well. So benefits all round really.
David and Andy, how are things with you? Any interesting updates since our last episode?
It's been interesting to see. We heard earlier on in the year how ADAS were predicting that the blackgrass dormancy was going to be low this year, and it's been very encouraging to see people, growers, agronomists, pushing their drilling dates as long as they dare, clearly with the intention of getting a stale seed bed and manage to get some glyphosate applications on, and that will hopefully help us in the fight against blackgrass. I'm really pleased to hear what Mark was saying about the benefits he's getting from the cover crop, the fact that it allows the blackgrass to come and it gives you an additional opportunity to control the blackgrass, and clearly all the benefits that you're getting from a legume like vetch and fitting it in the rotation. It's all very good to hear.
And Andy, how about yourself?
I think I remember the last podcast we did. I was stood in a field in really warm temperatures, and some first wheat was going in quite early, and I had the audacity to start talking about slugs, in a dry seedbed, etc. And I think since then, obviously, we've had very reasonably dry conditions. It's been a great autumn. But we'll talk a little bit further maybe about slugs, because I think what we've had is we've had generally less slug pressure nationally, but I know there are still some hotspots and people have been challenged. So,
sure.
But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come on to that. Well, as regular listeners will know, in each episode we like to get some feedback from growers around the UK. This month we have an update from South Staffordshire on the border of Shropshire.
My name is Andy Roberts. I farm with my brother and parents at Lower Barnes Farm in South Staffordshire, bordering Shropshire. We farm about 400 hectares of combinable crops, potatoes, and also a beef herd. Combinable crops consist of oilseed rape, winter wheat, spring barley, and winter barley. All the barley is for malting, hopefully. Winter wheat for feed, and the potatoes are all mostly for the chip shop trade. The yields last season were a bit of a mixed bag. We started off with the winter barley, which yielded quite well, about 7 tonnes to the hectare, and the quality was really good for malting. We had specific weights of about 70 kilogram per hectolitre, and the oilseed rape did okay as well, yielding over 4 tonne to the hectare. I think with those two crops, they'd more or less put on most of their yield before the drought really kicked in. The winter wheat was variable. The wheat on light land suffered really in the drought, but some of the more moisture retentive soils did fairly well. So overall, we averaged around 8 tonne to the hectare. But what really loosed us down was the spring barley had the effects of the late establishment due to the late winter, and then the growing season being curtailed by the drought. So it really knocked the yields, and we only averaged about 5 tonne to hectare, and also the quality, the nitrogens were far too high for malting, so it all went for feed in the end. So that was very disappointing. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag. The dry conditions, they carried on well into August, but by the time we were thinking of establishing this autumn's crops, we'd had some rain, so it didn't really affect establishment of the oilseed rape and winter wheat. Oilseed rape drilling started around the 20th of August and continued through until the 10th of September. The later drilled stuff did suffer a bit with the flea beetle damage, but we just about managed to get all the rape established. Winter wheat drilling started on the 17th of September. There was plenty of moisture for establishment then. On our soil types, on the sandy loams, we don't need too much moisture to get crops away because there's usually good seed to soil contact. And the winter wheat went into really good seed beds. Winter wheat and winter barley drilling was carried on into October. We had all the winter barley sown by the second week of October, and then we were just waiting for the last bit of wheat to go in after some potatoes, and they went in at the end of October. So all in all, it was a fairly good autumn for establishment.
So we'll hear a little bit more from Andy Roberts later in the show, but time to quiz our host here at Sherwood Farm with those very same questions. So Mark, how were your yields from the last season?
As the season went on, really quite unexpected. We started off in rape, which was down on our previous years and probably down on our long-term average. So rape wasn't particularly clever for us, but moving into barley, they held a very good average this year. I'd say around about the 8 tonne a hectare, which is down on our long-term average, but not disappointing by any means. We then probably moved into early wheat, which really surprised us all here. they've yielded very well and got some quality to them as well. So we're probably up on our long-term average on winter wheats. The average is about 9.2 tonne here. So we're probably up 3/4 of a tonne on that hopefully by the end of the year. And then beans were, an average yield again, 3.5 tonne a hectare, something like that. So not disappointing really, considering what came and as what's gone by.
So what would you put that down to? Because I mean that we obviously had a hell of a droughted season later on, but I mean your wheat there was yielding so well. Was it the sunshine? What do you put that down to? Do you think, or is it? Have you done anything differently this year to previous years that gave you that benefit?
Not really. I suppose the season got off to a late start. And here we held back on nitrogen, whereas this year it was quite evident that it needed some help early on. So we split the nitrogen slightly different. So we probably got some early nitrogen on some of all crops really. And the one thing that we did do as well, we did get a T0 on. And I think that helped the programme really early on in the season, which saw that carry on right the way through into harvest.
Okay, helping that real establishment and getting the crops. Okay, because I mean that would be one thing, wouldn't it? Quite a few people just missed that T0 last year, and I think interesting.
A lot of people did choose to sort of delay and combine a T0 and T1. Well, I chose to travel and put the T0 on with some growth regulator and do it the opposite way around. So I don't know if it worked, but the results are there. So
yeah, interesting.
And what about the impact of the dry conditions on your drilling, Mark?
Drilling, I suppose, went on as normal really. Here it probably benefited us because we're quite a moist soil type anyway, and it helped with the workability of the soil this year. Hence we weren't putting a lot of effort into trying to achieve a seedbed for like grass reason. It needs a fine seedbed. We seem to cope with that with one pass rather than 2 passes, a tine and a power harrow. It came down with a tine, so it actually benefited the grass, and then it got the right moisture just at the right time, so it's looking really good. The rape went in under with a direct drill, and we've managed to retain around about 70% of the acreage we drilled, so that's looking really good now. Beans have gone in this last week. We finished those. They've gone in excellently. You couldn't complain really. Moisture and firmness there, and the wheats and barley's just followed really. So it's been a really good year, I think, for establishment and drilling.
And that pressure on the oilseed rape, you say you've lost some of the acreage that was drilled. Was that flea beetle?
I think it's a combination of really not having firm enough seed beds from the start.
Right.
We spread quite a bit of organic matter on there, or farm manure, which laid on the top, so it harboured the slugs and the flea beetle, and hence it's probably been its demise really at the end of the day.
Yeah. But retaining 70%, that's not too bad considering what some people have been going through.
Yeah. Whether we can keep that going is another thing, but every year seems to be a bit different with rape, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And have you made any changes on rotation and drilling dates in recent years?
Rotation, we've changed quite a bit to bring forward grass into the arable side of things. So grass has now gone on to a 2-year lay to break the rotation for black grass, but it's purely on a silage basis. So we're taking high volume crops off of that, and we can then treat that crop once we're taking it off with the slurry to go back on to aid growth and reduce nitrogen bills really.
Right. So have there been any learnings from the last season, that might change the way you plan at all?
The previous season we weren't learnt quite a lot really. We have, the guys say about delayed drilling, we definitely see benefits in that, but if you're not careful on a heavy sort of wetland farm, you do incur yield loss. So it's the balance between yield loss and getting a crop established so you have an economic crop there in the first place. So it's always a balance, isn't it, to when do you drill, when do you don't, but we've definitely seen benefits from drilling later.
And in many cases you don't know until afterwards.
No.
Jack, you wanted to
And
add?
further on from what Mark said earlier about our T0, I think because we had that robust programme in last year and we met those timings, that's made a big difference. So I think going forward we're definitely looking to maintain doing that, and we've brought in a second sprayer to help make sure we do hit these application timings in the correct conditions to get best efficacy from products we apply. And I think going forward that's more and more important for us.
Excellent. Well, I want to move on to the topic of blackgrass that we focus on in each of our episodes. Mark, how big a problem is that for you here at Sherwood Farm, and how was the control in the recent harvest?
Blackgrass can be a problem. As we said, we're quite low-lying and wet soils that do flood and hold on to surface water. We've always probably had a blackgrass problem, but we, like you've heard, we are changing things to try and minimise the effect it does have. I don't think you'll live without it. I think you'll be very lucky, because the problem, you can think you've sort of controlled it and got on top of it, and lo and behold the next year it's surprised you yet again. But spring breaks, maize, grass in the rotation, adequate timing, and delayed drilling, good chemical use is all helping.
I think that's the key to it, isn't it? It's the combination of all these factors. I mean, you've mentioned already that because of the presence of the dairy units, you've got grass layers in the rotation. That makes a big difference. You've already mentioned about the oat and vetch as a cover crop, how that can help out. And Jack has just been saying about the timeliness of application, which is absolutely critical when we come to blackgrass herbicides, and certainly the pre-emergence timing. It's getting that on at the right time. I did mention earlier about the predictions for blackgrass dormancy. How did that work out on the farm here?
We'd have said we haven't actually noticed that much of a difference overall. We were sort of some of our drilling holding off, and we waiting until we see that good chit of blackgrass. And when we have seen that, the crops following that seem to have been pretty clean.
Yeah. I think at a practical level for this autumn, there may well have been lower dormancy in the blackgrass, but I think in many areas, and you've already said you've got good water retaining soils here, where there were dry seed beds, that hampered this early germination of the blackgrass, and people were waiting to drill. Now, clearly with your soil types, you can't afford to wait too long. So if you can get the opportunity, did you get an opportunity to go a stale seed bed and a glyphosate?
On most of it we did, yeah.
Yeah, so you've managed to do that, and again, to just cover this, the investment in a second sprayer, I mean, that's going to get your pre-ems on at the right time. You're going to get that magic 48-hour window to get those pre-ems on, and that is key to it, getting the right application, getting the ground speed, getting the water volume, and getting the right products on at the right time is going to make a big difference. But you're clearly making big inroads with the rotation, the spring cropping, you mentioned spring barley, and the grass lays in the rotation, it all helps.
Yeah, to add to that, the cultural side of all things have also been taken into account. Where we're growing beans, we'll only straw rake, and then spray off before we drill.
Yeah.
We'll delay a pre-em, because we obviously drill them in quite deep, and we'll add another round up to after drilling, basically. So you're getting 2 goes with pre-emergence blackgrass. We've also added a shallow set of discs, so anything going into rape gets a shallow disc, because obviously we're applying muck, so we have to incorporate that. but we were tining it before and it was too deep.
Yeah.
And we were drying out seed beds or leaving them too cloddy.
Yeah.
So we've added a nice set of shallow discs with a good packer on.
Yeah.
We have added the plough back into the rotation for the first time this year.
Yeah.
Some of the ground here hasn't been ploughed for 20 years, so the plough's come back out.
Yeah.
But that's purely to aid probably pulling grass lays out,
Yeah.
and only use when black grasses probably needs a kickstart again to reset the clock.
Yeah, yeah, and then the use of min-till in establishing the oilseed rapeseed beds, that's crucial for active ingredients such as carbetamide in crawler or propyzamide in curb, because we all know that's where they work best. If you've got shallow rooted blackgrass, that's going to give you the best opportunity for getting the highest levels of control.
Okay, well, we're going to carry on with this conversation shortly, and we're also going to cover off planning for spring as well. But for this episode's feature interview, as I mentioned earlier, I was thrilled to have grabbed a little bit of time with Alex Montgomery, who is one of Microsoft's Azure product leads in the UK. Let's have a listen to that now. So thanks for taking the time to chat to us today, Monty. This interview came about because of a short video that I actually saw posted on my LinkedIn feed that showed how Microsoft AI is helping an Australian ag tech company, which is called The Yield. And I just thought it would be a good place to start to understand exactly what issues the farming community have that Microsoft is helping to solve.
Sure. So it's great to be with you today, Russ. So fundamentally, Microsoft is a technology company, but we are a platform company. So in essence, we provide a wide range of platform capability that organizations such as The Yield are building on top of to solve specific challenges for industry. Broadly speaking, the platform capabilities that we're seeing a lot of momentum around involve cloud computing, the Internet of Things, the ability to capture and process data, and then use artificial intelligence on that data to drive outcome. So when we think about ag tech and we think about companies like The Yields and other organizations, typically they're looking to use soil sensors, they're looking to capture data from devices, they're looking to predict yields of crops, optimize the use of land, and also the intelligent management of farming equipment. So also the other side of the world, actually in New Zealand, we have a partner that has delivered a solution called SCADA Farm, which is enabling remote warnings to farmers when there's a risk of damage to equipment based on weather patterns and the like. So there's many use cases in the field, but they're predominantly driven around the better use of data coming from sensors, devices, and other connected machinery.
Well, it's interesting actually, because on that point, talking about connecting everything from out in the fields, something that's actually come up before in our podcast is the fact that connectivity can prove quite a challenge for some farms. So, obviously those in remote areas. So how have you overcome that?
Yeah, it's a great point, and you're right. So we've done some work globally in places like Africa and elsewhere, which is very relevant to upland farming in the UK, and that's looking at overcoming that challenge by using sort of innovative methods, something called TV white space. So the freeing up of that bandwidth on the airwaves when we moved away from analog television to digital television actually left a space that can be used to create a network. So devices can connect up to that local network. It's high speed. It tends to deal with interference very well. And then that local network can then be bridged to connect out to the internet. So that's one thing that we've seen. Our research teams are working hard with alternatives. I mean, you'll have seen other vendors are looking at things such as sort of drones to provide networks, maybe balloons and so on and so forth. But some great innovative opportunities to more effectively connect devices in the field. And all the while that's going on, fundamentally, we're looking forward to a more robust, resilient Wi-Fi net or connected network across the UK with the further rollout of 4G and the forthcoming rollout of 5G as well, which will only improve the overall situation.
Sounds great. So do you actually have any examples of how this technology is being used closer to home then? I mean, we mentioned the Yield before, but what about here in the UK?
Yeah, sure. So as I say, we've been working with a number of organizations around the planet, but when I think about more local use case, I'm going to call out some work we've been doing with an organization called Agrimetrics, who are one of 4 agritech centers that were initially set up with government funding here in the UK, with a mission to use big data and artificial intelligence to improve sustainability and efficiency within the agri-food system. There's a number of use cases I'd like to call out that those guys have delivered. I'll start with an interesting one, which is a connected cow. So believe it or not, by putting a pedometer on a cow, they're able to monitor the activity of those animals. They're able to understand when the animal is in heat, which therefore in turn allows them to increase the yield of the milk and also increase the health and well-being of the cow as to how it's being managed. So connected cow. But then thinking outside of that, when we think about capturing data, there's a wide range of use cases that they've deployed. I'm going to speak first about the potato yield example. Now, if farmers are able to harvest potatoes when they have the optimum distribution of sizes, that enables them to maximize the income which they can receive. So by using data, machine learning, sensors, and algorithms on our cloud, that farmers using the agrimetric service can now predict more accurately the types of yield and the size of potatoes that they're actually going to actually harvest. So a significant commercial benefit to the farmer, allowing them to reduce waste and also to maximize the return from that harvest. They're working on natural capital examples, so specifically around water quality. So again, using data and cloud analytics, agrimetrics are able to provide more accurate information, enabling farmers to make management decisions to improve the way the quality of the water. And that's based around things like the type of crops that are being sown, locations, and exterior sort of data points as well. And one other one I'll just very quickly mention is around the optimization of water storage. And we've got a couple of examples of this in the UK and more broadly as well around the globe, around being able to use analysis of local reservoirs, looking at the prediction of demand as to how they need to actually irrigate the crops, but then also the ability to perhaps replenish those reservoirs at a time which is most cost optimized, as it were. So where variable price for water or indeed any other type of commodity is required, or utility, I should say, rather than commodity, using the insights from this data enables farmers to act more efficiently and minimize capital expenditure where appropriate.
There's some great examples there. Clearly so much happening already in this space. Well, just out of interest, what else is on the horizon that we should be looking out for in terms of AI and IoT within agriculture?
Well, I think I've mentioned a number of use cases already that are being used globally. So I think drones, I very quickly mentioned there, we're increasingly seeing interest in drone technology, which is enabling, if you imagine analysis of photography, a drone, whether it's fixed wing or whether it's one of the rotary drones, is very quickly able to assess land, take detailed imagery, and that imagery can be fed through the machine learning algorithms on our cloud to start to predict and suggest better use cases. So drone is being rolled out a lot. Precision agriculture has obviously been around for a little while now. Again, the opportunity with cloud and the reduced cost of cloud and the ability to process huge amounts of data quickly and at low cost is really opening up lots and lots of different use cases. So I think it's really just an acceleration of many of the use cases which I've touched on here, the increasing availability of these services, the reduced cost, hopefully, and over time, I think we'll see increasing positive outcomes as we look to sort of maximize yield and predict outcomes more effectively.
Fascinating stuff. Monty, if listeners want to find out more about the work that you're doing at Microsoft, or further detail actually on those case studies that you talked about, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of resources I would point people to. I mean, first and foremost, if you were to go to the Microsoft website, so microsoft.com/Azure, that's AZURE, that's the cloud platform upon which this is all built. I would highly recommend that people go to the agrimetrics website, which is, as it sounds, but agrimetrics.co.uk, so agrimetrics.co.uk. They have specific detail of the ag tech use cases, which I've mentioned there. I also think it's worth having a look on YouTube as well. So if people were to go to YouTube and search for Smart Agriculture Microsoft, I think that will bring up a number of example videos there as well. And finally, if people do want to know specific more details, I'm happy for people to reach out to me directly. And if you want to do that, feel free to do that either on LinkedIn or even on email. So if you drop me an email, Monty, Monty @microsoft.com, I'll be happy to field any specific requests and point people to additional resources.
That's brilliant. Alex Montgomery, thank you for joining the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So while we were listening to that interview, we've moved to Mark's winter barley field here on the farm. There was some fascinating stuff there that Alex shared with us. Mark, what impact has technology had on your job here?
I suppose it allows you to monitor and become more efficient. It allows you to budget more accurately. We've got a farm software pack, on the computer, which has dramatically improved the direct. You can have a direct view of what's going on. You can do your spray records off that. Jack can talk about that, how we're dealing with that. And it's generally, if you embrace it, it will help.
Yeah. I like the way you've deferred that over to Jack. So I'll come to Jack on that one. I mean, are you excited about AI and IoT and all these other technology acronyms that I can throw out?
Yeah, well, we're not quite down the AI route quite yet, but it's helping the technology we're currently using, so RTK, GPS, things like that, is really helping improve our precision with application, drilling, everything, making sure we are applying what we plan to apply in the right area. Again, goes back to efficacy. We're not running short of chemical when we get towards the end of preems, things like that. But like going forward, I've been reading a lot about using big data and things like that to analyse and look for trends, so we can predict, or maybe not predict, but look to predict what we might be seeing coming forward from what crops are looking like and what crops have looked like in previous years. Going forward.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Okay, let's return to the conversation on blackgrass. Mark, how much are you relying on pre-emergent herbicides, and are they still doing a good job for you?
We do rely on pre-emergence. The trend has moved towards stacking them, and we're definitely doing that. But I think if you use them wisely to start with, the effect later on is apparent that you do get control, whereas if you probably don't use them to start with, you end up slipping back and getting less and less control out of some products or some herbicides.
In terms of what proportion of blackgrass area actually gets a follow-up post-emergent?
I would say less now. You say a follow-up, we tend to do a pre-em. We're beginning to go down the post-emergent route as well, rather than after Christmas herbicides. I think it's once you've got past Christmas, if you've got blackgrass and you haven't dealt with it, I think you've got to live with it. But we look on controlling blackgrass to get a viable crop before Christmas.
I think the key now is as you've said, Mark, it's getting those pre-ems right. It's getting the choice of active ingredients. We've got flufenacet, pendimethalin. There's a number to choose from, but those are the ones that are used often. Diflufenican, Avodex, Triolate, Avodex granules. They have a key part to play, and I'd absolutely agree that if you can, with the investment in the two sprayers, get your pre-ems on at the right dose, get good coverage, get them applied preferably within 48 hours of drilling, that's going to give you the best possible start. And then equally that gives you a far better opportunity to get higher levels of control where a post-em product is needed. And I think in many situations now growers and agronomists are looking at, I would say, a minimum of 3 different active ingredients in combinations of different products, and sometimes 4, 5 or even 6 different active ingredients being used where blackgrass is at its worst, and that's without including the glyphosate that goes on pre-drilling. So it is a case of hit it hard and hit it early, I think. And with that in mind, you're getting the control levels that you would like to see in the main, I would guess.
Control is very good. I mean, what Jack was saying about the technology side, we're finding that we're controlling certain areas of soil type, but not others. And I think this is where it will help that if we could map our blackgrass and then tailor the extra inputs into that problem areas rather than a blanket approach, because the blanket approach is a costly one, whereas if you can sort of map and then target, I think that will bring costs down. So actually the herbicide bill isn't reflected to be high on the hectarage basis. It is maintained to a minimum level of input, basically.
Which brings us back to the importance of the technology. If you can do that and help map it, let's say by soil type, and then you can use different cultural and chemical approaches where the soil type varies.
And well, like we were saying, going back to the blanket approach, we're doing a lot more of spot treatment. So we might give a certain spray off an area, or give a certain area post-stem if it's really bad. And we're not treating the wheat crop as a whole. Every field's different, and we're feeling if we're treating every field different, we're getting it perfect for each condition. Because on this farm, the soil type varies hugely and conditions vary hugely from field to field.
And
you can't treat it the same.
Absolutely, the advent of technology with GPS and the ability to map to really quite high degrees of accuracy gives you the opportunity to do that. And there have to be two benefits to that. One is improved control where it's required, and another is an overall cost saving.
One of the other things we wanted to ask, Mark, was how you balance disease control and resistance management in your cereals.
Basically, you choose the most up-to-date varieties so that you've got the most disease resistance genes in them to start with. We don't tend to grow too many varieties. We'll go down the route of one variety, grow it on a big acreage, and then move on. And then that aids you in the follow-up spray programs, that if they are have higher levels of disease resistance, so you can tailor your inputs to them then.
Right. Okay. We talked earlier about the dry summer, and you referenced earlier as well, it's been a pretty dry autumn too. We're also keen to know how slug control has gone for you here.
This year we've probably used the least amount of slug pellets for a number of years. We started off using them in rape because I think it's once you monitor the amount that's there, and we tailored the slug pellet use towards the rape, and then after that we've basically monitored and used accordingly. We've changed our approach to slug pelleting. We use all Slux HP around the headlands and metaldehyde inside, purely for an environmental and the buffer zones that have been introduced.
Yeah. So following the stewardship guidelines, and okay. So you're still using metaldehyde, and is that through the fact that works really well for you? And
well, I suppose it's always been traditional, so it's the route we've always used. But what we are doing is trying to monitor more now, rather than it was, we're going to use slug pellets. We're saying, you can work on the past history and your knowledge of the farm, that if it's that condition, that crop, there's going to be probably a need for them, but we'll also monitor that now and then use accordingly the product that suits best, really.
Yeah, so it's adopting that integrated approach with trapping, etc., and then choosing the right product.
We used to blanket applied slug pellets behind the drill, and we've gone away from that this year. And as you say, as the crop comes up, we can monitor and actually see them, or seeing the conditions, we can apply them when we're doing Avadex or Preems or anything, seeing how the conditions change. So you've got sort of three opportunities really: the drill, the Avadex and the sprayer.
Okay.
And how conditions unfold.
Okay. And are you with your metaldehyde pellets? Do you use 1.5s? Do you use 3s? Or there are two schools here really, because of the actual maximum amount you can put on. Some people favour 1.5s because they can go more times. Some people will go on a durable pellet as a 3%, and my view is, if you pick the right pellet and you put it on at the right time, then you can actually achieve some good control. So obviously Adama has Gusto, and that is a 3%, and it's a very good high integrity pellet. So I just wondered which way.
Yeah, we use Gusto 3s.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's reassuring to know.
Purely because we've used them in the past, and if you have your slug pellet tray tested, they're the ones that will particularly reach the outer limits of a 30 metre spinner.
Okay, so in terms of that balance between spreadability and durability, etc., then you go into that. Okay, interesting to know.
Good stuff. Okay, we're recording this episode in sort of early mid-November. We wanted to get some thoughts on fungicide planning for the spring. Mark, I'm going to ask you about that and your approach regarding programs in a second. But I asked the same question to Andy Roberts, who we heard from earlier in the show. So let's hear his thoughts first.
In terms of planning a fungicide program for the cereals in the spring, it's a long way to go, but planning always starts with the variety. So I've chosen wheat varieties with good septoria resistance, or the best you can get on the list anyway, which is a 6 or 7. So I've gone for varieties such as Graham, Shabras, Siskin and Costello. But in terms of the actual fungicide program, we'll just wait and see what the spring brings us, really. Last year I managed to avoid a T0 because it was such a late spring, and also a lot of the T3s were emitted due to the dry conditions. But who knows what this spring will bring. I think the standard program will be a T0 of chlorothalonil, T1 of chlorothalonil, triazole, and SDHI on the higher potential fields, and then the T2 will be SDHI and triazole, and possibly chlorothalonil if the label allows, and then T3 I'll just judge that again according to the conditions at the time, but it'll probably be a follicule based treatment, tebuconazole.
Andy, any comments on what your namesake had to say there?
Just that it's interesting to hear that Andy was including multi-site chemistry in his programs. We have big challenges, particularly in wheat, with septoria and resistance to single-site chemistries. So I was quite reassured to hear that a multi-site was being used. It was using chlorothalonil, but I'm a great advocate of multi-site chemistry. And Adama has Folpet, which is an alternative to chlorothalonil as a multi-site product. Whilst multi-site chemistry, we tend to group them in that group. They do work in slightly different ways, so it's not exactly the same, but you know, it offers choice. It doesn't mean that you always have to choose one. Folpet offers some interesting properties in that it doesn't interfere with the uptake of partner products, and therefore you can maximise curative activity when you need it. So it may well be that is a good choice to consider at a certain timing, perhaps. But no, in terms of the real crucial part for me was that Andy was including multi-site chemistry for resistance management, so that's reassuring.
And Mark, what's your thoughts on this area?
Same view really. We do quite an extensive fungicide program here. Wooding, you know, the Bravo type products been used in that at the correct doses and at time rates, and then following on onto the ear really. It's important to use them wisely, I think.
And I just have one more comment about kind of some of the things I'm hearing from you guys, which is really interesting for me, is your focus on precision with crop protection products here. You know, I talk a lot about, because my area is fungicides, but one of the things I really think, timing is absolutely crucial to a fungicide, as it is for other crop protection products. But with fungicides, hitting those timings, you'll get the absolute most out of the products that we have. And I mean, we have resistance challenges in both wheat and barley, particularly to single site chemistry. There are new things coming, but they will be single site, and we need to protect them with multi-site chemistry and continue to do that, but we also need to get the timings right, so we don't put these things in curative situations, because curative situations are not that great for kind of sustainability of products. You're always challenging them then, in terms of trying to protect them against falling down to resistance, etc. And you'll get the best out of them. So really interested to hear that you've got a real focus on this farm with doing those things really well. So yeah, really impressed with that.
Good stuff. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. It's actually our last episode of 2018. So David and Andy, anything our listeners should be considering as we head into the winter and the new year? David, let's come to you.
Not necessarily seasonally specific, but what we've heard during the course of the podcast we've done this year is, and we've just touched on it, the attention to detail.
Yeah.
And that is coming through loud and clear. The progressive, successful farmers, the progressive, successful agronomists, they have this attention to detail, they plan properly, they carry out on their plans. Anything that doesn't go as they expect it to, they then make amendments, slight adjustments for the following year and keep moving forward. And they're always looking forward. Learn from the past, but plan for the future.
And Andy, final words from you?
I think very much the same. I think it's clear that doing everything better is you just end up lifting yield and quality. And they're both very important. And just doing those things, making those changes, precision. It's clearly the way to go. And these guys are clearly embracing that.
Good stuff. Okay, well that actually wraps up what I think we're now calling season 1 of ArableAware. So thanks once again to David Roberts and Andy Bailey of Adama for joining me here, and of course Mark Aldroyd and Jack Bedlow here at Sherwood Farm, and of course Ruby as well, who's walked the whole way with us. We hope you've been enjoying this series. We'll actually be back doing it all again in 2019, but in the meantime, if you've missed any of our previous episodes, you can catch up by subscribing to the show on your favourite podcast platforms such as iTunes and Spotify. Just search for ArableAware, that's all one word. And whilst you're there, please do give us a positive rating and review, as that helps us up the podcast charts. Alternatively, you can find us on the Adama UK website. So go to uk.information-hub.adama.com/ArableAware, or maybe simpler, go to www.adama.com/UK/EN and just search for podcast, and you should find all the previous shows. We've so far visited Nottinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Norfolk and now Oxfordshire on this series. If you'd like us to come and record the show on your farm, or if you've got anything you want to comment on or want us to cover off in series 2 next year, then please get in touch either on the hub, on our Facebook page, via Twitter, which is @AdamaUK_, or simply by emailing the team using ukinquiries@adama.com. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.